Well, it's the most wonderful time of year, and no, that's not Christmas. It's actually 60-degree flannel weather here in the Midwest, at least for me. That's the best time of year. Today I'm over here doing some mowing on these real mowed plots. I want to show you what all that's looking like, give you some updates on everything else, go down to the shade area and probably do a first mow down on that section. So a whole lot coming in this video. A couple observations about these plots so far. One, the ryegrass and the turf type tall fescue are definitely much farther along than the bluegrass and the fine fescue. Not very surprising really. Ryegrass especially will be up and going and will look fairly decent in 3 to 4 weeks. You could usually have a pretty good looking lawn. Fescue is a lot faster as well. Bluegrass by far the slowest, and fine fescue is going to take some time too to really start to mature here. So those are just some general observations. One thing that I also noticed with these plots is, if you'll remember correctly, I was going for not disturbing the soil too much here. So I didn't really do any tilling. I just tried to lightly come over top with my power rake and take any of the high spots down and try to make it as level as possible. But I had done a pretty good removal of the weeds that were here, so I didn't want to till up that soil if possible. But what's happened with that is that I probably didn't remove quite enough of that dead material that was on top, even though I did go through and de-thatch it, if you will. But I tried to remove as much of that dead material as I could, but I definitely could have been more aggressive with it. So I think that's inhibited some of these more bare spots to come in, just because I didn't get great seed to soil contact in those spots. I think I also have a verdict, at least for myself, on that Slope Master product. I don't love it as much as the straw blankets. I feel like it's pretty easy to get it to cake up in a spot, and then it doesn't seem like once that dries out and it almost forms that cake-like material there, that it allows the grass to come through very easily. So I have some bare spots in some of these areas from that happening as well. Nothing that's going to be hard to fix, although it is getting later in the season. I may do a very light overseed and cover that seed with a light top dressing on some of these bare spots yet. But if I don't, I also have plenty of time in the spring to let it come back and mature and see where we're at and do a light overseed at that point. But a very good start to these plots. I'm really liking the way that it's looking, and I'm very surprised by the turf type tall fescue and how clean and nice it looks here at this 3/4 inch. I've been testing that back in my house this year, so I knew somewhat what it's going to look like, but starting out an entire plot here, very low cut, it looks nice and clean. I really like it. So here's what I've learned about the Kentucky 31 so far this year is what we already knew. It's a very resilient grass. I put it through about 6 weeks with no irrigation on the first season. It came back from that totally fine, no issues. It's actually looking a lot thicker than it was in the spring, and I did not do an overseed on it. So, you know, as the plant matures, it's going to tiller out more too. But I don't know if it's going to show here, but here's the color difference on the Elite Fescue here and then on the Kentucky 31 next to that. So some of these things are just genetic differences that, of course, we could treat this and treat this and treat this and try to get it much darker, but these are genetically just going to look a lot better. And also that Kentucky 31, a very wide blade. It's not a very soft grass. If you want to walk on it, it's not the greatest there for that either. If you're looking for something in maybe a larger area that you don't care about too much, you don't care to treat it or do a whole lot with it, but you want some good ground cover there, that might be an option for you. Like we talked about before, it used to be a cheap option, not so much anymore. So if the price difference isn't huge, I would just go with a much improved type of variety here, because you're going to get better color, all that stuff out of it. So what you just saw me mowing there was my Elite Shade in full sun. So most shade grasses are still tolerant of full sun, but sometimes the fine fescues in here are not going to like that quite as much during the midsummer time. So I wanted to be able to show you that. There's a lot of people with a shade and sun situation in their yard. So they want to know long term, can I plant this in full sun and in the shade? What will it look like? So that's really what this test plot is for. You could always mix in a tall fescue for the sun areas that's pretty shade tolerant as well. It's just that that fine fescue has a much different look than a tall fescue because it's a very fine blade. If you want a very consistent looking yard and you're looking for those types of things with full sun and full shade, we're looking for an option here that might work in both. had to take off the old flannel already. It's too warm out here with the sun. This is something I don't think I've ever been able to show on my channel. So this is the future buffalo grass plot. And this right here was just a curve into that other plot that I didn't know what to do with, so I put some perennial ryegrass here. But right now, this is annual ryegrass, just holding this in place for the winter time before I plant that next year with buffalo grass. I've never been able to show these two next to each other, but this will give you a sense of, one, the color. Annual ryegrass usually does not have that deep dark color that perennial ryegrass will, and also it tends to really grow very quickly. It has a lot of moisture in it a lot of times. So down south, I haven't been able to talk about this really before, but if you wanted to overseed your Bermuda grass, sometimes zoysia, so that just simply means you're able to put a cool season grass over top of that warm season grass and keep it green during your winter time, where here we're covered with snow, ice, freezing temperatures, and the ground is frozen. You guys down there can actually take a cool season grass that we have all year round up here and put it over top of your Bermuda or zoysia, and you can keep mowing and keep it green during the winter time. But a lot of people would want to know, would you want to choose an annual rye or should you go with more of a perennial? And the reason I would go with perennial is, one, has a lot better genetic color to it, so it's going to look darker and it's just overall going to look nicer, I think, than this annual will. Also, with this annual, like I said, it tends to grow really fast, and if you get some rainfall down in the winter time down south, and let's say you can't get to the yard for multiple days on end, this thing can get really tall, and it has a lot of moisture in it, so it can get really clumpy when you mow. Perennial can do that too, don't get me wrong, but from what I'm seeing with this, just the leaf blade and the tissue there, it could really become a mess if you let it get too tall. So what you would want to do though with these perennials, if you decide to go with that and you go with an overseed down south, you'll want to remove that in the springtime, so that would be spraying it out. And a lot of times in the past they used to just scalp these down and let the sun and the heat take care of it, but the perennial ryegrass has become so tolerant of heat with many of these better varieties that it doesn't transition out as easily as it used to. So I would definitely, if you don't want to harm your Bermuda or zoysia, I would make sure that you get that sprayed. So do a little research on your area as to what you could spray and make sure it's okay for your grass type. But you will want to make sure to spray that out, or you can have some issues with it competing with your warm season turf as it gets warmer. So this of course is the micro clover, and I let this get too tall. It's growing really quickly again, just like that annual rye, it seems to be growing really quickly. But from the research that I did at the beginning here, it said if you can keep it consistently mowed at the beginning, the difference between this and what you might see as clover in your lawn is supposed to be that the actual little leaves on there should be really micro in size, and that's where the name comes from. And so it should look more dense and should be closer to the ground and should look good and like a good ground cover. So I'm going to keep mowing this consistently. I think I'm going to try to stick with the reel mower here. It's a lot easier to turn around in here and pick it up, and also it just gives it a nice clean cut. It's not that that other one didn't work for that, but I think it looks better cut a little shorter here, and I'm going to try to see if I can get it to be a nice ground cover and see what it looks like next season. Same situation here with the micro clover and turf type tall fescue mixed together. I'm just trying to keep this mowed consistently, but right now I feel like I got pretty good even coverage of the clover throughout there, but really right now just looks like grass with a regular clover mixed throughout. So we'll see long term how this looks and how it fares with pulling some nitrogen out of the air, which clover does, and puts it back into the soil. So that's another test that I wanted to do and wanted to see how it may affect the grass and helping it to get some fertilizer out of the air. This bluegrass mono stand here is doing what bluegrass does and is very slow. Definitely some coming in, but very slow. Regular plots all look good. These are just about at a year old now. So since we don't live out here this season, but we will next, it's been very difficult for me to do what I would want to do with a very targeted fertilizer program, especially because of my sandy soil. But I still think they're looking great. So I saw some different tracks and I thought, what the heck is going on here? Definitely looks more like some sort of large tracks, and when I checked that camera, I knew exactly what had happened. So, of course, 3 full-size horses walking on here is a lot of weight that's not usually on here, but you can definitely see the prints, and I don't know exactly how Knorr pulled this off all the way from Utah. Getting these sent to here and walked straight across one of the best looking plots that I have, but somehow he pulled it off. Those blankets take a while to remove, but they definitely help. You can see them behind me here. Everything really grew in very well, and I'm definitely pleased with how this is looking so far. So just to get you up to speed, these are the drought testing plots over here. So I have every type of grass and then a couple of mono stands of tall fescue. So this one right here needs to be planted yet. I just got that seed in, so I'll be doing that soon. But I'm gonna do a first mow on the rest of this stuff real quick here and make it look nice. Back in the shade spot down here, just look at this, needs a mow, but it's really recovered nicely from just some of that drought that was down here. Obviously this was not watered whatsoever other than the very limited amount of rain we got, so it looks good. Remember, I was waiting here to see what kind of damage was going to come back on this, and it definitely looks like there was some drought damage, but nothing really terrible. So a quick overseed would fix that. Or honestly, probably this season, I'll let this just see what kind of creeping abilities it has out into here. Same old down there. Looks good. Not much change. Still getting a few leaves coming down, but I'm down here for one reason. First mow today on all this. So this, of course, is the dense shade testing spot, and we have bluegrass the far side of the camera. Right in between those 2 trees, you can kind of see the line where the ryegrass starts closest to the camera here. Both of these have really grown in fairly well, but you can definitely tell it's getting later in the year. They're not getting a whole lot of sunlight. They don't have a lot of great color to them. So I'll be interested to see what happens next season. Definitely some throwaway blades in that Honda. That's why I brought that down here. I knew there's going to be a lot of sticks and debris and things to go through on these first couple mows. And then hopefully as it grows up, there's always going to be some sticks and things down here. But I'm used to that over in the shade section. And it's honestly not too bad. I walk through right before I mow and just make sure there's nothing crazy that's fallen down or anything like that, but it's not bad. That is a look today at what's been going on here out at Westbury Acres. If you want to see what's been happening with the house, you can check that out on my other channel. And also I'll be talking about the brand new lawn that's either going to go in right now or going to have to wait until spring. I'm still trying to figure that out right now, but I'm going to be talking about that very, very soon and give you the info. As we get closer to actually moving, it's not too far off now. So thanks so much for watching today, and we'll see you next time.